I'm very grateful to Explain International for inviting me. Samuel and the team actually drove all the way into Singapore to pick me up and drive me into JB. And the moment I stepped into the car, we immediately began discussing a very deep theological question. Who has the better food, Singapore or Malaysia? Oh, don't answer. The theologians were discussing, okay? And we discussed for 2 hours on the road. Do you want to hear? We came to a consensus. Do you want to hear? No lah, let's talk about something more interesting. When we talk about the Trinity, we often go straight to New Testament passages. And there's nothing wrong with that. After all, the New Testament is often more conveniently spelled out in the truths of the Bible, right? We can very conveniently just quote a New Testament passage directly, and people will understand, more or less, what we are sharing with them, even without further explanation. Now, to be clear, all the same truths are also found in the Old Testament, but it requires often more explanation on our part in order for people to understand what we are sharing with them from the Old Testament passages. However, it is commonly and mistakenly thought that the truth of the Trinity was something new that only was revealed after Jesus came in the New Testament. Right? People think that during Old Testament times, faithful Israelites and Jews were unaware that God was a Trinity, as though they believed only in God as Father, and they did not know that there was also God the Son and God the Holy Spirit. However, this is not true. To be sure, the Old Testament teaches monotheism. This is the idea that there is only one true God. All right. A very important passage is Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. All right. Even today, Jewish people use this verse as their faith statement. All right. To say that they believe in only one true God. And indeed, Trinitarianism, the doctrine of the Trinity, begins with the truth that there is only one true God. Now, there's something I want to point out to you from this verse. If you notice in your English Bible translations, the word Lord often appears in all caps, L-O-R-D, all capital letters. Now, in the original Hebrew text, the word Lord, when it is spelled in this way, is actually this word. All right, it's 4 letters, but it is the personal name of God. No one knows exactly how this name is pronounced. All right, educated guesses include Yehovah or Yahweh. All right, and so you will find in some Bible translations, sometimes it's Jehovah, sometimes it's Yahweh. All right. Other passages, just flip to chapter 32, verse 39 of Deuteronomy. God says, "See now that I, even I, am He, and there is no God beside me. I kill and I make alive, I wound and I heal, and there is none that can deliver out of my hand." So God here is saying that there is no other God besides Him. Right? So again, as Christians, we believe in the Trinity, which includes the reality that there is only one true God. Right? And so did the Old Testament saints. So yes, the Old Testament saints did believe that there was only one true God, yet they also believed that the one true God was complex in His oneness. And this reality is found in their scriptures, which we call the Old Testament. Now, to prove this in full will take more than the time that is assigned to me tonight. So in the time that I do have, I will focus on a few episodes in the Old Testament where the biblical passage identifies at least 2 distinct persons who are truly God without compromising the truth that there is only one true God. Let's take a look. Many episodes that I could choose. I could only choose this few. Let's begin with the story of Abraham's visitors in Genesis chapter 18. All right? The story starts in verse 1. It says, "And the Lord appeared to him," Abraham, "by the oaks of Mamre." And again, you see the word Lord, Lord in all capitals. Means that is the personal name of God there. Okay? So the Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. Then the passage will tell us how the Lord appeared to Abraham. He lifted up his eyes. Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. And verse 2 continues, "When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth and said, 'O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant.'" Now I want you to observe the word Lord. This time it's not all capitals. Only the letter L is capital. Why? Because in the original Hebrew text, the word for Lord here is another word. It's not the personal name for God. It's another word, Adonai. Can everyone say with me? Adonai. All right? Now, this title is a special title that is only used for the true God. All right? You cannot call any other person Adonai, no matter how high he is in society, whether a king or a priest or anyone, you cannot call him by this title. All right? So, Abraham addressed one of the 3 men standing in front of him and called him Adonai. All right? And how do I know he's only addressing one of them? Well, because again, in the Hebrew text, you see, "I have found favor in your sight. Do not pass by your servant." Well, in English, when you say you or your, you don't know if you're talking to one person or multiple people, right? But in Hebrew, there is actually a difference, all right? And here, the word for your is actually singular. So Abraham is only addressing one of the 3 men who is standing in front of him, all right? So 3 men appeared to Abraham, and yet Abraham addressed one of them as Lord, using this special name that is only reserved for the true God. Now, dear friends, God is in heaven. What is Abraham doing, bowing down and addressing a man in front of him as if he were the true God? Something is fishy. Unless Abraham was a Trinitarian, that he believed that there is a God in heaven, the one true God, and yet there is no contradiction when he saw the man in front of him, and this is also the true God. Right? Like let's take a look further in the story. In verse 9, the men now start to have a conversation with Abraham. Right? They said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "She is in the tent." And in verse 10, the Lord speaks. Again, capital Lord. This is the personal name of the true God. Now, this man identified as the true God begins to speak, and essentially, they're having a conversation. All right? Verse 13, the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." This man is speaking very strangely. He's speaking as if he is the true God. I mean, we have already seen that. But again, you must realize that this man is not speaking like just a mere mortal, right? And then later on, 2 of the men went off, right? Verse 22 says, "So the men turned from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord." So the picture is the 2 men, remember, the 2 men with Abraham, now they went off to Sodom, and yet Abraham still stood before the Lord. And then they have a further conversation where Abraham tries to bargain with the Lord, right, regarding whether he will destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham answered and said, I have already gone down, right? The bargain is now halfway in progress. Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord. And again here, capital L, small O-R-D. This is the special title, Adonai, that is only used for the true God. Then, finally, at the end of chapter 18, it says, and the Lord went his way when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So again, what's the picture? The Lord and Abraham were having a conversation, and then the Lord just, at the end of the conversation, the Lord just walked away. So, up to this point in Genesis chapter 18, the biblical text has described the Lord as a man who came to Abraham and had a normal conversation with Abraham and could then just walk away like a man. And yet, there is still the Lord up in heaven. The story doesn't end here. Rather, it transitions smoothly into the next story, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis chapter 19. All right, I'll skip all the verses. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah ends in chapter 19, verse 24. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. Now that's a very strange way to phrase it, right? Why not just say the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from out of heaven? Yeah, that makes more sense. It's smoother. Right? But no, the text says, the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. The most natural way to read this text is that there is the Lord who was on earth, who had a conversation with Abraham, and then who went his way. And this Lord who was on earth rained fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord who is in heaven. Two lords, one on earth who had a conversation with Abraham, and one in heaven. Right? And yet, I have showed you Bible verses just now that there is only one true God. How can this be? Is this a contradiction? It could be, unless Abraham was a Trinitarian. Abraham believed that God was complex in his oneness. And that is why he didn't find a problem with this, right? That the Lord can appear in front of him, and yet the Lord is also in heaven, and yet there is only one Lord. All right, let's take a look at the next episode, Moses and the burning bush, in Exodus chapter 3. All right, first of all, we have to discuss what is an angel. Now, when we talk about an angel, when we use the word angel, normally what comes to our mind is this person, a man or a woman dressed in white with wings and with a halo. That's what we usually think about. However, actually, in the biblical languages, the word for angel simply means messenger. All right? It just means messenger. So, for example, in Genesis chapter 32, verse 3, it says that Jacob sent messengers, and the Hebrew word there is malach, which is the normal word for angel, right? Now, clearly Jacob wasn't sending some supernatural being dressed in white with a halo and wings, right? No, he was sending messengers to his brother Esau. Likewise, from the New Testament in Luke chapter 7, verse 24, it says that John's messengers have gone. The word messenger there is angelos, from which we get the word angel, right? Angelos, it's simply a messenger. Again, John wasn't controlling supernatural beings dressed in white with a halo and wings. Okay? No, so the word angel itself just means messenger. It could refer to a heavenly messenger, but in other contexts, it could also refer to a human messenger and also this mysterious figure called the angel of the Lord. And we'll see this in Exodus chapter 3. It says in verse 2, "And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a burning bush. So, we all know the story, right? Moses found a bush that was burning, and guess what? The angel of the Lord was in that burning bush and spoke to Moses. Okay? So, again, angel doesn't mean created being. It doesn't have to mean that, right? The word angel simply means messenger. But what I want to point out is that the word angel is, an angel is sent by the Lord, right? You can't send yourself. You cannot be your own messenger, all right? So the word angel or messenger implies that this person is sent by whom? Is sent by the Lord, okay? But notice what this angel can do. In verse 5, it says, then he said, and in context, the word he there is the angel of the Lord. Okay, so the angel of the Lord said, do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. Now, dear friends, there are many other angels in the Old Testament. But this angel of the Lord, asks Moses to take the shoes off his feet because the ground before him is holy. This is not a common angel. This is not just some heavenly messenger. If his presence causes the ground around him to become holy. And notice what this angel of the Lord again says in the next verse. This angel of the Lord, he says, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Wait a minute, isn't he just an angel? No, he's not. This angel of the Lord speaks as though he is the Lord himself. So what do we have here? Again, the word angel means that he was sent. Angel of the Lord means that he was sent by the Lord. And yet this angel of the Lord, despite being sent by the Lord, speaks as though he is the Lord himself. So what do we have here? How many lords do we have? One angel of the Lord who is also the Lord, and then one Lord in heaven. And yet, this same Moses wrote the passages which I showed in the beginning, that there is only one Lord. Is this a contradiction? It could be, unless Moses was a Trinitarian. Next, let's fast forward to Daniel's night visions. All right, Daniel, let's see what he says. Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 to 14. I've modified one line. I'll tell you why later. Okay, it says, I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man, and he came to the Ancient of Days. And this is the line that I modified just so that it becomes clearer in the word order, okay? And before him, they presented him. So the first hymn is the Ancient of Days, and then the second hymn is the one like the Son of Man. Okay, so what happens? Again, one like a Son of Man came before the Ancient of Days. So two persons. Ancient of Days, one person, one like the Son of Man, another person. Okay, now the Ancient of Days is clearly God. Okay, and then the one like the Son of Man is brought before him. Yet, look what happens to this one like the Son of Man. And I highlight the pronouns in blue to show you that the hymn in verse 14, all this hymn refers to the one like the Son of Man. Okay. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. Now, the interesting thing about verse 14 is that, you see, it says that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. Well, the word serve here in the original Aramaic text is belah. Belah means to serve God. So in English, we just say serve, but in Hebrew, in Aramaic, there are different words for service, and this word, belah, specifically means to serve God. So let's take a look here. Ancient of Days. Yep, truly God. And yet, this one like a son of man is also served as though he were truly God. How many gods? 1, 2. And yet, there is only one true God. Is there a contradiction? Could be, unless Daniel was a Trinitarian. Okay, I have a bonus one. I was debating whether to show this. How much time do I have? Okay, never mind. Let's do it. Psalm 91. Psalm 91, a very well-known psalm because many people recite it as a psalm of protection. Right? It begins like this. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler. Right, so yeah, when you just read this, it looks almost as if, this is just describing the person who trusts in God. If a person trusts in God, then God will protect him, right? That's what he says, right? Until you come to verses 9 to 10. Because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. And now you say, Asher, what's so special about this? It's just repeating the promise, right? That God will protect the one who trusts in him. Well, this is where I say, actually, that's not the most natural reading of the Hebrew text. All right? I think the translators are wrong here. And actually, the most natural reading of the Hebrew text is Ki atta Yehovah mahsi, elyon samta me'onecha. Because you, O Lord, are my refuge, you have made the Most High your dwelling place. That's the most natural and reasonable reading of the Hebrew text. Okay? Now, what do we have here? The psalmist is addressing this person, and he calls him, O Lord. And again, capital L-O-R-D, right? Which means what? The personal name of the true God. The psalmist is addressing the true God, and what he's saying? You, O Lord, are my refuge. You, O Lord, the true God, have made the Most High your dwelling place. The psalmist is addressing the Lord and saying that the Lord has made the Most High his dwelling place, his place of protection. Think about it. The Lord, the true God, has the true God above him. And yet, there is only one true God. Is this a contradiction? It could be, unless the psalmist is a Trinitarian. So you see, all these things are already there in the Old Testament. So by the time that Jesus was born, God's complex oneness was not something strange or unknown to the people of God. Rather, God's people believed that there is only one true God. And yet this one true God is complex in his oneness, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They did not think that God's complex oneness was in any way contradictory to monotheism or problematic to the Old Testament. So then the question naturally arises, right? I can't show this now. I've run out of time. So sorry. The question naturally arises. So if the Trinity is found in the Old Testament, then why don't Jews believe in the Trinity, right? After all, the Old Testament was the Bible of the Jewish people. So if the Trinity is in the Old Testament, then they should believe it, right? But they don't believe it, what? So how? Well, actually, many Jews did believe in the Trinity. Let us remember that the first Christians were all Jews, and they had no problem saying that Jesus is truly God in the same sense as the Father even though there is only one true God. They didn't think it was a contradiction because they were Trinitarians. They read their Bibles and they saw these episodes that I showed you, and I only could show you a fraction of the many episodes that are present in the Old Testament. Right? However, Jewish religion changed over time. The Judaism that Jews practice today is significantly different from the true religion of the Old Testament that was practiced by faithful Israelites and Jews. Non-Christian Jewish interpretations of the Bible are not necessarily correct or true. For example, non-Christian Jews today don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Yet, this does not change the reality that Jesus is the Messiah, according to the Old Testament. Likewise, non-Christian Jews today don't believe in the Trinity. Yet, this does not change the reality that the Trinity is found in the Old Testament, as I have demonstrated tonight. Thank you.